first time, I think it was in 2018, we were still doing the Back Row Baptist podcast before we had started the radio station, before we had started the morning show. Mo and I were doing the podcast, and I invited Bubba to come down, and we were doing a joint podcast for Free Play and Back Row Baptist podcast. And so it started with both podcasts started with the same 30 minutes. And it was just Bubba and I talking back and forth about, memories of us growing up together and nerdy stuff we were doing. And then cut to Back Row Baptist show or Free Play show. And for our part, we were focusing on what Love Thy Nerd was, because Love Thy Nerd was still relatively new. And as he was going through all this, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. He was laying it all out. I'm like, I am salivating at how much I want to be a part of this. And so that day began my my 2-year quest to infiltrate LTN and become a part of it. I love the concept. I think it is a fantastic thing. I think it's a need. I think it's I want to say the word niche, but it's not. That makes it sound small. I think it's actually a giant niche ministry. Like, it's something that has been overlooked for a long, long time. And I know there are quite a few other ministries that are focused in the same area. But Love Thy Nerd just has this passion about it. Everybody that has been, the original founders, all the way up to the people that are volunteering alongside myself, like, you can tell this means something more than just, hey, we have a group of people that we play video games with online. This is a outreach in the purest sense of the word. Like, this is bringing people in, whether they're believers or not, and showing them the love that Jesus would show to those who maybe didn't believe in him, or maybe those, the whole thing about Jesus eating with the tax collectors and the sinners and all that, and how the world would, the religious scholars and everybody would think that Jesus was a sinner too, just because he gave them the time of day and actually spent time with them and enjoyed, sharing a drink with them and sharing dinner with them. And like, that's the kind of mindset we should all have as believers, right? We should want to become all things to all people. We should want to come into these groups, showcase some of the love of the nerdy stuff that we have, and make that connection with people through that. And so then they'll be able to open up to us about more important things maybe in the future. If nothing else, they'll know that we're here for them if they ever want to talk about it, if they have a question about it, if they need to know what makes us just a little bit different, what we've found that make things just a little bit better with the way we interact with the world. I think Christians are too cynical today. I think they're too quick to judge, which, I mean, it's Pharisees, man. It's rough. It's hard, and it's hard for us to see that. And it's also hard to judge people for it because, that's just kind of how we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned with this us versus them mentality. And so if you're not with us, you're against us. And, mostly driven by politics. Let's just put it that way. It's mostly driven by politics, at least in my opinion. And so to come into this space, this Love Thy Nerd space, and just see this working, about as perfect, I think, as it can work, that's inspired me and confirmed in my mind that this is something that I want to be a part of. And so I'm not sure that it's, again, strengthened my faith, but it's definitely strengthened my resolve when it comes to the purpose of this ministry. And before we were LTN, we were Back Row, and that was a wider thing. It wasn't just the show. We had podcasts, we had the Back Row radio station, we've had books, we've had games, we've had a blog back then. We had It originally started as a Twitter account, Back Row Baptist, at Back Row Baptist on Twitter, which was pretty darn popular. I ranked up in the double digit thousands. And it was a big deal. It was a big platform that God gave me. And that's what we used it for humor and healing. We were able to reach out to people through laughter, through, the silly things that, church culture does. And that let guards down. That actually allowed people to be willing to talk. It gave people a space to talk about things that they thought was off limits to talk about. And therefore, they never addressed it. I have had more serious faith-based conversations based on silly jokes than I ever thought possible. And that's the same mentality with LTN, except now nerd-focused. I'm sure many of us have had dozens of serious, faith-strengthening conversations based off of the weirdest set of comic books or video games or anything else out there, because that's how the conversation started. I mean, I love it. It's brilliant.